Welcome back to Claiming Your Creative Voice. I'm Lindsay, and this is my good friend,
Leslie.
We're thrilled to be here with you guys.
So happy.
And I'm really excited for what we're going to talk about today because this was actually something that was inspired by you.
Yes, I was in my bath yesterday.
And you've got a good story.
Yes, I had some crystals in my bath and this idea came to me. But then I also have a story that I would like to harken back to from when I was a girl. Do you want me to share that now?
I mean, tell them what we're going to be talking about first.
Okay, so what we're talking about, good point. What we're talking about is inviting in that inspiration for the sheer sake of creation, because we are creators. We are divine creators, in fact, versus perfectionism, versus the sake of perfection, like a product, like a perfect product. Just inviting in that inspiration. And I did have a story around this that's just,
I love
honestly,
story.
It's super heartbreaking to me when I think of the younger me, the younger version of me that, who is the star of this story. So I grew up in Sarasota, Florida. We had a really beautiful yard. It was very, tropical. I had lots of beautiful plants and flowers. And I, that year for Christmas, had asked for a Crayola art kit.
How old were you?
I mean, I'm guessing I was something like around 9 or something.
Yeah. The Crayola art
Yes.
kit.
And it had a red cover and you could pull out, it had this little plastic
handle. Yes.
Yeah, and so then you would just unfold the cover and there would be the clays, the chalks, the colored pencils, the paints, the brushes, the pad of paper, all in one place, just so uniform and organized and colorful and just oh, I mean, I just wanted it so bad. So I was really, really, really excited to get it. So then in my mind, I had this picture of myself, just being out on the lawn and just painting these tropical landscapes or what have you. So I get a little blanket and I go outside on a beautiful day with my new art kit, unfold it, get my pad out. I've got a little Dixie cup with some water in it to, zhuzh out my paintbrushes. And I'm ready and Lindsay, I could not even start. I never even really put the brush to the paper. I never put pencil to paper. I didn't. It's like the idea of what I thought I should do stopped me from doing anything. Because it's not like I had art classes. It's not like and not that those are necessary, guys, don't get me wrong. It's not that I also had grown up in a home where art was being made or encouraged. So I just had no sort of basis other than in my mind thinking how wonderful it would be.
Yeah, you had no real context.
No context, but in my mind, it was like pressure.
Had you watched art shit like Bob Ross?
No, I don't think I had. Oh my God, that's awesome.
He didn't tell you.
You didn't. So I just was so stuck because I guess I thought, well, if I can't do it well and I don't even know how to get started, I must not be good enough, or it's not, that perfectionism or that idea just totally halting you in your tracks. I mean, how sad is that? And I remember that I used to take piano too, and for years, and I never got to the point with my piano playing where it was just the neurons would fire from my brain to my fingers fast enough for me to just put a piece of music and just play, without having to painstakingly take time to practice. And I got frustrated with that and judgmental. So really what we're really talking about is there's shame, there's self-shaming and judgment going on. Because what you're doing is you're completely halting your creative process, going, anything I do is kind of gonna suck. How sad is that, right? So this is one of the things that I feel like I'm really getting right at this point in my life, and I'm so pleased and so proud, and I just want to encourage everyone. So we'd like to talk about inviting inspiration into your life. Give an invitation on the daily to inspiration. Why? Because we are joyful creators. That is we are meant to be. That is who we are meant to be.
I'm a little mind equals blown right now because I'd never, and thank you so much for connecting the two, because in my mind, I always like to understand why. That's like a big, it's just a learning tool for me. I'm like, if I understand the why, then I can proceed. I don't know why, it just is what it is. And so you connecting the fact that like there's a shame piece that halts, because I think we can all relate to that. Like I know for me in various scenarios, I always like, well, I don't sound like this person is a singer, therefore I must not be good. Right? Like again, and we talked about this in another episode, representation.
Yeah.
What we see, you know, and all of us who grew up, you know, before the dawn of the digital age, and even still, like, we primarily see things that are glossed over, beautified, highest caliber, polished, really, really not real, you know, at the end of the day. And so comparing ourselves constantly to something that is not a realistic interpretation of fill in the blank causes a lot of internal dissonance. And you do get to a place where you have shame around the fact that your creation doesn't look
could
like
never
the
look
next.
like that. Oh, I could never do that.
I never even attached shame to that process.
And shame is fear.
Yeah.
Like shame is fear. That's
brilliant.
what, if you boil it down, it is. It's fear. So I'm just really getting this in my life right now, and so and it makes me so happy to understand that we are meant to create, and that is a big piece of our joy and our individuality, and how what I create is going to be so different from what you create. Right? And so if I only understood that at the age, you know, the ripe old age of 9, I mean, I would have just done whatever, just like whatever fucking scribble or brushstroke, or just get started and see what happens. And just flow, right?
Yes.
And so, again, inviting that inspiration in for creation's sake.
Yeah.
And there are ways to do this. I'd like to talk about this. There are ways to do this, in my opinion.
I am thrilled to hear this, because I think that my youngest son is a little bit like fearful of it not being perfect, and I would love your
I hate
so
that
excited
for him, because Evan's the same way. And I don't know where he gets that.
Well, but I also think, like,
didn't I just say that? I must have handed that down. That breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Because we can hand these things
But I
down.
also think too,
even though we
like,
don't teach it, they can get.
But intelligent
transferred.
children also they can perceive what is. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that there might be something to the fact that it is a model behavior for sure. But I also think that, especially, and I don't know if you would say this for Evan, but like Riker is he has high emotional IQ. He's very aware of his surroundings. He's more aware of self than most kids his age. And I think that he has a high sense of awareness of what looks good and what doesn't. You know what I mean? And so, like, I think that has a lot to do with it, too. It's just, like, he knows.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't even... Yeah.
For kids, I would say, and I wasn't really thinking about kids when I was getting ready to say this, but I do, when you asked me that, I do have something to say about it.
Kids and inner children.
Exactly. But it's an invitation to play.
Yeah.
Right? So have a lot of invitation to play. And sometimes the invitation can be made by us as parents or caregivers or friends or what have you, putting the things out in a creative way. Like we get inspired and we put out maybe a tarot deck and some crystals and some Legos and some, I don't know, just lay out some cool shit and just maybe even be like, I was thinking about something and I was wondering if you had an idea for this or a solution for this, or could you build me this? I was wondering if there could be a magical land where, you know what I mean, and just an invitation to play. So
that's
sometimes
totally. I'm like gonna go home and like get all their crystals out and their Legos out on the
make
dinner table.
Make a grid, make a crystal grid. You know, what would that look like? You know, and let's invite in. I don't know, just give Alpha a couple of ideas just to get the wheels turning. And that can work for us adults too. Like for instance, one of the ways, and this is hard one when you're a busy parent or a busy person in general, but of course busy is a choice, so we have to find
so
the
true.
time, right? We find the time, and carving out the time is not easy, but there is a time and space piece here, right? Where we need to have a space that has good energy.
Right.
Right, that's not super cluttered, that because then our mind is cluttered. There's a mirroring that happens there. So finding a space that can be yours, or that you can claim, maybe it's used by other people that live with you, but that you can claim as yours at the very least, and then invite that space to be cleared of any energy other than yours, or of your, your guides, call in God and the angels and all of that, and invite that in and get really clear. A lot of times I'll take, Palo Santo, light it up, clear the space, clear myself, and I invite anything that doesn't belong to me, that's clinging to me, that is not serving my highest good and my highest creative, intuitive self. I invite it to leave, but in a really loving way, and I just say, I uncreate it, I release it.
Oh, I like that. I uncreate this.
Yeah,
I'm going to use that.
I release it, and I let it be transmuted, and may it just go. And I'm ready to be here, and I'm ready to be now. So I'll do some sort of ritual around it, and I'll get myself clear, I'll do my thing, and I'll feel incredibly grounded and present.
I love that you also mentioned ritual too, because that's another thing that's like coming online for me, is especially again as a parent, my kids always seemed to struggle with transitions. Moving from one activity to the next, especially if they're not transitions that they choose. If they're playing, we have to leave, do something they don't really care about. And I'm starting to notice that in my own life too. I'm like, ooh, I can notice that, like, if I'm full on in work mode and then I have to jump right into like helping the kids with something or cooking or like anything domestic, I have a lot of resistance that comes up around that. And I was like, oh, I struggle with transitions.
Right.
And you can, there is like some really sweet awareness when you can start to sense like what's happening when you're moving from one activity to the next, especially for those of you that are parents. Like, there's a lot of demands on our attention that are they're not like demands. They're very extreme polar ends of the spectrum type of demands. So your brain is jumping from activity to activity, and it's exhausting. And so I love that you used ritual, because I've noticed that, like, I've started, ever since you got me my cauldron for my birthday, I've started to use the Palo Santo when I'm wanting to like transition from, especially if I'm doing something active and really yang, as you say, and I want to go and do something a little more introspective and meditative. Even just a simple ritual of clearing the space does something psychologically that really shifts my energy and like shifts me into
I'm trying to do this. There it is.
something completely different. And had I not done something that is a physical representation of, now we are moving into this.
There's the ritual. This is the ritual.
Exactly.
You pick it up. You
Otherwise, it feels up here, and it feels like I'm willing my energy to like
exactly.
And to do the other thing,
and you shift.
Yeah.
You shift
and
the
so
energy.
It's so much more than just like, oh, I have these like witchy woo woo like rituals that I do because I'm
Take
so
some clearing,
spiritual.
some beautiful clearing energy out there, you guys. I wish you could smell it.
It's not just that. It's like actually there's like something physiological that happens by moving around and smelling.
And absolutely.
Yeah.
And energetically it's very grounding.
Yes.
And so it invites in the presence. So you've created a space, you created some ritual, and you have gotten grounded in the moment. And you're just inviting in inspiration. You're like, hey, inspiration, come hang out. You really are.
That's
you really,
cool.
really are.
Yeah.
And like we said, we've gotten rid of anything that might be clinging to us that's not going to be very open to inspiration. And that includes self-judgment and judgment of others, of course, where I touched on that.
Yes.
So here's the thing. When it comes, go for it. Don't judge it. Don't go, oh, well, that's just silly.
Yeah.
Go
so
for it.
Important, right?
Put that brush to paper. Put your hands on the keyboard. Start typing away. And the thing is, just go. Be in flow, and just that flow will continue if you allow it to. Because that inspiration, that idea, it's there for you.
Yeah.
You've invited it in.
Yeah.
So how like arrogant and shitty of you is it really to be like, I invited you here, but on second thought, yeah, no thanks.
But fuck off.
No thanks. So I just really love this, and this makes me think of another thing that I wanted to share. I have some friends who are brilliant songwriters, right? And in this town, there's that, co-write thing where so many people do that every day of the week. They might even do 2 or 3 a day.
Full-time
job. So that becomes more of this, left brain activity.
Right.
And it's not that those songs get out there, even though they might not be as inspired and right brain all the time. There's a lot of different ways of going about, say for instance, songwriting.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that even though there are so many people that have done it for decades, and maybe they've taken a lot of songwriting courses, and maybe they've, that doesn't mean, because one time I overheard someone say, who's a very good, accomplished musician and songwriter, say, well, everyone in this town especially thinks they can write a song, thinks they can be a songwriter, but, songwriting is, da-da-da-da.
It takes some work.
And I remember going, okay, valid point, I understand why you're saying that, but when I really think about it, well, anyone can write a song. Because there's shame. There's some shaming behind that. There's some fear behind that idea. Yeah. That doesn't mean that you can't grow your skill set and go do that.
Right.
Absolutely. But don't hold back if you want to write a song and you've never taken a composition course. And you don't consider yourself
a
whatever.
writer. Yeah.
There's shame in that opinion, and I don't love it. I don't love that. Even though, I have degrees in music, I work in music, all of that, I've worked really hard. I still say, I don't give a shit about any of that. I give a shit about inspiration, creativity, being that divine creator, and saying yes when that inspiration drops in. Because you could come up with something so fantastic that the world would miss out on, or that could be extremely healing for you.
And it seems like at the end of the day, really what artists are channels.
Yeah.
The best artists really understand that they're channels for divine creative inspiration,
just let it drop in.
And flow.
Yeah.
And you're right, like when you aren't aware of that piece of you being a channel and it just becomes left brain, like I'm gonna write a hit today, it really sucks the inspiration out of it.
It can.
And it doesn't necessarily connect to audiences in the way that it would if you really didn't just open up and allow it to flow.
Exactly. I mean, it's no right or wrong.
Right.
Those, some of those songs, I mean, that's what we're hearing on the radio. That's what we might be dancing our asses off. It might be bringing us joy. But yeah, I just don't want to discount that you don't have to be one of those work-a-day songwriters or someone who has a PhD in composition or doo-dah. You don't have to be any of that. You can invite in inspiration and creativity and create just for the sake of creation. And you are really doing yourself a solid, and energetically, it can be very healing for you. And if it's healing for you, it's healing for those around you.
Yeah.
So just invite it in. Don't judge it. Don't judge it. Just let it flow.
And I just don't buy that even the songs that were written by like a collective of songwriters that everyone loves, I don't buy that it wasn't on some level a creative channel.
Sure. I mean, I think every process is different. Yeah.
If it's something that stood the test of time,
right,
it had to have been divinely inspired.
Right.
There's no way of getting around that. And there's plenty of songs out there that we dance our asses off to that like maybe weren't divinely inspired in the sense that like the subject matter, but there's something about it that still moves people.
There's a piece of joy.
It's fun. It's whimsical, or it's funny, or like there's always a piece. And so like you said, there's no one right way necessarily, but it's the awareness piece that you are here to channel divine inspiration. That's really what this is about.
Yeah.
And when you start to see it that way, it really shifts your approach to your craft.
It does.
And it makes you more intentional, like around what you said, like set up a space in your home. Make sure that you have maybe some ritual that helps you shift out of your day job or the kids or the husband or the dog or the what have you, that's constantly vying for our attention.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, I just really feel so strongly about this piece. And again, there are different ways, and so I certainly do not mean at all because I mean the hunker down, in a room with 2 or 3 other people and write that song, is a bad thing. It's a brilliant skill.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
It's a brilliant strategy
It's
too.
it's
you know,
a strategy.
because
It's
it's like a collective
skill,
of channels.
and not to say that every single one of those people aren't maybe clearing themselves in the morning and inviting in inspiration.
Totally.
You know, but I'm saying it doesn't have to look like anything, and it doesn't have to be. It certainly shouldn't be about perfection or product.
Right.
But that process, inviting in that process, is, man, I just think it's why we're here. I think it's one of the reasons we're here.
Yeah.
And so that is
Agreed.
what I wanted to talk about, and I just want to encourage that.
I'm so glad you did.
Yeah,
I've definitely
just wanna
had some
encourage
like
that.
huge connections. So I'm so glad that you were open to let that
Yes.
drop in for you, because that was
Yes.
even helpful for me.
Yeah, I dropped in my bathtub, had all my crystals around, and I was like, what are we inviting in to talk about tomorrow?
Yes.
As you and I were texting and going, let's just see, and you were like, well, let's just kind of see what drops in. I'm like, I love it, let's do that. So I was like, ooh, I've got like 30 minutes
Done.
before my next lesson, I'm gonna go take a bath.
Yeah. Love it. There you go.
So yeah, invitation to inspiration for creation.
Mm,
Yeah.
love it.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.